We can see you and hear you, Alicia.
Okay, will you please start and I'll work on my technical difficulty on my end.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Want to just say how grateful we are for everyone that came out last night for our private screening of Killers of the Flower Moon. If you have seen it, then you already know what a great film it was. And if you haven't, then by all means, I highly recommend it. Want to say a very special thank you, though, to Chief Gray. He's the former chief of the Osage Nation and just a phenomenal fellow. He came from Tulsa with his son to speak before the event, and then they turned around and drove back to Tulsa. He said it was important to him that he be there because we asked him to come, and gave us a really wonderful shout out today on Twitter. So we're grateful for him, but we're really grateful for everyone that came out, supported it, and we had a great time. And it was just another good opportunity for Democrats to come together and fellowship as Dems. You good now, Alicia?
I am good.
All right.
All righty. I want to add to what Scott said. Thank you to Chief Gray and thank you to Henry Gray. The fact that Henry drove up was super special, considering that the man he's named after was depicted in the movie and was brutally murdered. And so the fact that Henry was able to know that and still participate to help us have a better experience is greatly appreciated and not lost on us. So that was wonderful, and be looking forward to the more things that we're going to be doing as Democrats together as fellowshipping and ideas to recruit and get more Democrats involved so we can get more Democrats elected. So there was that. Now let's talk about the news. I'm going to start with some Oklahoma news, right? There's a 13-year-old student in Guthrie who left the school because, again, 13-year-old student in Guthrie who left the school because she was being bullied by her teacher. And folks knew it. Like, people had reported it. Other students had reported being bullied by this teacher as well. And this teacher drove a student out. And so it's not bad enough that kids have to be worried about being bullied by their peers, but they're also being bullied by teachers. This goes along with the hazing that's happening in Kingfisher. The world's gone topsy-turvy, and we got to keep an eye on it and figure out what we have to do to bring us back to a level of civility. Right now, there are folks, and I don't want to blame it completely on the opposition party, but there are folks that believe that being a strong man, believe that being the person with the loudest voice is a show of real force and real power. And that's not how we get things done in this country, or it shouldn't be how we get things done in this country. A perfect example of that is the former president storming out of a courtroom and, as a result, getting a $10,000 fine for violating the gag order, and having another court trying to release the stay, canceling the stay on a different gag order, because he's so concerned in saying what he wants to say and doing what he wants to do, regardless of what the court says, regardless of what the rule says. And he's setting a really bad example. And I say that, and it is super important because right now he is still the front runner to be the presidential nominee on the other side. And they're following that, and they believe in that. And intimidating folks and being a bully and spreading lies should not be what we aspire to as a nation. And I'm very concerned, which leads me to the biggest news of yesterday. In Maine, which is 1/3 of the size of Oklahoma with regards to population. In Maine, the event of last night, the spree shooting of last night, resulted in the most amount of deaths that state has had this year. More folks were killed and harmed last night than have been all year in that state. And so, if you live in a place where you think that you're dealing with safety, and then folks who are playing pool, teenagers who are bowling, are just at risk of a person who, sad to say, is battling mental illness, a person who has a history of domestic violence, a person who threatened to do this before and who's on the run. It's not Monday. It's Thursday, and I'm having to talk about mass shootings because they're happening. And this one is more than a mass shooting in that it's a spree shooting. So he shot a bunch of folks in one place and went to another place and shot a bunch of folks. And the news came out today that he bought the firearm he used in committing this crime, or he bought the same kind of firearm. We don't know if it's the same one, the same kind of firearm that he used to commit this crime legally. At some point, we've got to beat down I don't know, I want to call them casually because they're not dealt with any real thought. We have to beat down the casual oppositions to having a reasonable conversation about reasonable common sense gun laws, right? If Maine would have been a state with red flag laws, when he threatened to do this before, that might have been a reason that they could have taken his guns for a little while to give him a cooling off period and give his guns back. Or when he was inpatient for mental health, that could have been a reason to take his guns for a little while until he had a cooling off period and give them back to him. When he was involved in domestic violence, that could have been an opportunity to take his guns back. But what you will hear, and I've purposely not engaged today, but what you will hear is that the left is looking for any reason to take guns away from law-abiding citizens. So here's what I'm going to say. It's not any reason. It's a very specific, actually 3 very specific reasons. In addition to the lives that were lost last night and the lives that are now having to deal with the trauma of the events of last night. So no, this isn't an opportunity or an excuse where libs are looking for a reason to take guns. This is an opportunity where very real gunmen have given reason, justification, cause for having reasonable common sense gun laws. It's truly that simple. Domestic violence, actual mental health treatment, and threats of mass violence, mass gun violence. If those aren't enough reasons to take guns from someone, I fear we may be doomed. I fear we may be doomed. I'm not coming for guns, but let's have a real conversation. Because he bought the guns legally. So do we just let everyone keep their guns no matter what the threat they are and hope that the lives lost aren't the folks that we love, that we know personally? Is that what, because someone knew those people? I had to turn off the news today because I watched parents and wives talk about how they haven't heard word as to whether or not their loved one is alive or not, because they're trying to get through all of the people, all of the bodies in ID and figure out what's going on. That seems like reason enough for us to have the real conversation. But like I know, that it won't be enough. Because tomorrow we'll be talking about the ridiculous person that was recently elected to be Speaker of the House. We'll be talking about the ridiculous person who used to be president. We'll be talking about some other shiny object while we set ourselves up to wait for the next mass shooting. Or we could start the conversation. And the way that we start the conversation here in Oklahoma is that we reach out to our elected officials. We call, and their legislative assistants or their executive assistants are going to answer the phone. And I'm going to ask you to be polite. So those are people who are just doing their jobs and don't have access to passing laws. but we've got to call. We've got to raise the temperature on this because Maine is a state that has a lot of laws like ours. No red flag laws, permitless carry. What was the other one? No real pause on, no real waiting period for buying a gun, and no rules, and they have loopholes for gun shows. Rules and laws very much like ours. They are a state with 1/3 the amount of people that we do, and that's what happened to them yesterday. My heart goes out to those folks, but I don't want to have a shared experience with those folks. And we could stop it if we had the will. So I'm encouraging you to please reach out to your legislators, both in the House and the state Senate, and urge them, because right now they're in the process of writing their bills for the next legislative session. That's what they're doing right now. They're having meetings all over their districts, and they're talking to their voters, and they're deciding what bills they're going to put forth in the next legislative session. That's what's happening right now. So let's talk to all of our legislators and see if we can get them to carry some common sense gun bills. Common sense gun bills that gets us closer to something that's reasonable, something that means that not every Yahoo gets to keep their gun. Not every Yahoo gets to get a gun if they are truly a danger to society, if they are threatening to be a danger to society or themselves. And this guy did both. And no, Crystal, your state rep doesn't care. However, we're going to keep calling as many as we can. Don't let the fact that you have a Republican representing you be a reason not to call. Because if we call and state our piece, they can't then go on the floor and say, no one's calling. I haven't heard. My district wants this. We got to let them know what their district wants. Gotta. All righty. Thanks for joining me. And I will be back with you tomorrow at 4:15.